guy named Khalid Ibn Al-Walid. So I love this guy's name. Khalid means immortal, Ibn means son, Walid means newborn. So he's the immortal son of the newborn. Very cool. It's an awesome name. Khalid Ibn Al-Walid is the warrior's warrior. In human history, there have only been two people who fit into his category, him, and another guy named Thutmose III. In the West, we talk about Robert E. Lee or Erwin Rommel, or we talk about Alexander the Great or Julius Caesar. And it's true that all four of those guys were really amazing generals and really amazing at getting into a bad battle situation and pulling it off. Khalid ibn Walid and Thutmose III were never defeated. All the guys I just mentioned were defeated at one point. Well, Alexander the Great wasn't, but Alexander the Great didn't have the kind of wins that these guys had. Khalid ibn Walid was one of the three greatest warriors of all time. And that's one of the reasons why I want to cover him, is because I just want to do a profile in a person who, if you're interested in warfare, it totally embodied warfare. So this is a talk about war. And I'll probably also get a little bit of flack for over-glorifying war, which is cool too. I'm okay with that as well. Khalid ibn Walid was a soldier in both of those battles. In 625, he was there when the Meccans defeated Muhammad and the Muslims, and he was fighting for the Meccans against the Muslims. In 627, he's there again at the Battle of the Trench, where the Muslims defeat the Meccans. Afterwards, and we don't know exactly when, but within 2 years, he switches sides and he converts to Islam. In 629, that's why I know it's within 2 years, he's marching with soldiers from Yathrib north. So see where it says Petra? Go to the east of that, there's a city called, or a town called Muta. And he marches towards Muta with this army. 3,000 Arabs, 3,000 Muslim Arabs. And their goal is to attack the Roman Empire, because they're in it. See where it says Bani Ghassan? The Ghassanids were Christian Arabs who fought for the Romans. Where it says Banu Lahm, those were Christian Arabs who fought for the Persians. So I'm going to have to be careful here when I say Arabs. So I'm gonna try to remember to say Muslim Arabs so that you know I'm not talking about the Christian Arabs fighting for the Romans or the Persians, right? But for the record, there are Jewish Arabs too in the whole mix, just to make it really complicated. In any case, they march to Muta. The Romans find out there's this Muslim army coming towards them. They don't take it very seriously, but they take it seriously enough. They dispatch a force to go meet them. We don't know the exact size of the Roman force. I would bet you like a dollar, maybe $1.10, that it was about 10,000 soldiers. Sources from the time period said it was 100,000. I find that really hard to believe because the Romans were having so much trouble fielding a force. And why would you bring 100,000 men to fight 3,000 men? It seems unlikely. But anyway, the number is probably 10,000, maybe 20,000. It's not 100,000. So the Arabs are deployed, the Muslim Arabs are deployed against Christian Arabs who are fighting for the Romans. And the Romans outnumber them probably 3 or 4 or 5 to 1, maybe 6 to 1, maybe 7 to 1. It's bad. And they fight instead of running away like they should have. And they get the crap beat out of them. And the Muslim Arabs are just in bad trouble, and they keep retreating, they keep retreating. One commander after another dies. Finally, the last commander turns to Khalid ibn Walid and goes, I want you to figure out how to get us out of here. And hands him the banner to put him in command of the Arab army, the Muslim Arab army. And what Khalid ibn Walid does is he'll take soldiers and he'll give them a banner, and he'll have them sneak around a hill at night. So they're behind the hill. And then in the daytime, he'll have them come over the top of the hill. And then when they arrive where the Arab army is, he secretly sneaks them another banner. They sneak around the backside of the hill, and then they'll come over the top of it again. And then he gives them another banner, and then they'll go around the back of the hill and they'll come over the top. So the Romans watching this are like, man, look at all the reinforcements they're getting. And it was just the same group of guys that just kept marching in a circle around this hill. And then when the sun went down, he would have each man set 5, 10 campfires and then try to keep walking around in front of the campfires. So the Romans watching it would not only see a bunch of campfires, they would see all these men walking in front of the campfires. And he just kept doing these tricks. And what it did was it kept the Romans from attacking, because the Romans thought, man, I don't know how big that force is. There's so many of them. And he kept doing this until he finally got far enough away from the Roman army, he could just tell his men to run, let's run. And they ran. That is the only battle Khalid Ibn Al-Walid was in command of where he didn't win. It was the first time he was ever in command, and he was put in command after they had already lost, in circumstances that were impossible to win. The Prophet Muhammad will eventually capture Mecca, and when he does, he'll own the western part of Arabia and the very eastern part of Arabia, but not the rest of it. And this is important because Arabia had never, ever, ever, in its entire history up until that moment, been ruled by a single political entity. Not, the Arabians had never ruled Arabia, the Persians had never ruled Arabia, the Ethiopians had never ruled Arabia, the Romans had never ruled Arabia. At one point, the Ethiopians had captured a piece of Arabia, the Yemen. And then, of course, the Persians have that chunk over there in the northeast, and the Romans had that chunk in the northwest. But no one had ever ruled all of Arabia as a single political entity. The closest anybody had come, in fact, was the Prophet Muhammad. When he died in 632, he had gotten such a big chunk, he probably had about 40% of Arabia. He was replaced by a guy named Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr didn't take the title king, he didn't take the title emperor, he took the title follower of the messenger of God and became the ruler of this Muslim-controlled chunk of Arabia. He made 2 armies. He sent one army from Yathrib due east, and he sent the other army south to Yemen. And his goal is to finally, once and for all, conquer Arabia and rule it. And actually, he was ruling from Mecca at that point. The guy he put in charge of his army that went east was Khalid Ibn Al-Walid. And Khalid will do a series of battles against a heretic who was claiming to be the real prophet in an event called the Ridda Wars. And Khalid will win battle after battle after battle. And by 633, Arabia is unified. So the campaign started in 632. It took less than a year. And in part because of Khalid's decisive victories in the center of Arabia. At that point, there's argument amongst historians exactly what happened next. Did Abu Bakr order Khalid to keep going, or did he tell Khalid to stop? It's entirely possible either is true. He doesn't stop. That's the important thing. Whether he was told to stop or told to keep going, he doesn't stop. And he goes towards the very southern tip of Iraq. So see where it says Sabur? He's headed in that direction. He ends up fighting a battle in what is today Kuwait. It's called the Battle of the Chains. The Persian general Hormuzd chains up his elite soldiers to show the Arabs that there is no retreat, that the Persians will fight to the death because they've made it so they can't retreat because they're chained together. But also because Khalid relied heavily on cavalry, it would be impossible to do a cavalry charge through them because there are chains in between them, so there's no way to get through. What Khalid liked to, the way battles went back then, everybody did this, the Persians, the Romans, everybody did this, is they would send champions to go fight each other before the battle. But what the Arabs liked to do was first poetry. So they would get their best improv poet, because they would improv right there. They didn't They didn't have a poem written in advance. And they would get that poet to shout to the other army a poem. And the belief was that if you shouted a good enough poem, the other side should give you the field and walk away. And of course, the Persians were like, screw you, we don't even speak Arabic, we don't know what you're saying. So after the Arab shouts this poetry at the Persians who are annoyed, Khalid walks out and says, I'm my champion. I'll fight the Persian champion. That's a problem for the Persian general then, because if he doesn't go fight, it's general versus general. If he doesn't make it general versus general, it makes him look like a coward. So the Persian general goes, okay, let me fight. And they go out and they fight, and Khalid Ibn Al-Walid kills him within like 30 seconds. It's a really quick fight. And so now the Persians are going to go into the battle without their general. And what Khalid did was he just kept using his cavalry to do these charges against the Persians that just kept them off balance, until finally he broke up their order. And what they should have done was they should have repositioned, or they should have retreated a little bit and then repositioned, but they can't because they're chained together. And he swings his cavalry around the backside and starts harassing them, and he tears them to pieces. The estimate is that he brought 18,000 men against 20,000 Persians, the same Persians who tore those Romans to pieces almost 700 years prior. And he walked away with a couple hundred killed, and the Persians lost, and most were killed or captured. And then what he's going to do is he's going to work his way along the western bank of the Euphrates River. And his goal is the city that's labeled as Herat there. At the time, it was called Hira, or at least the Arabs called it Hira. And he's heading towards Hira. And he'll fight 3 more battles. The rivers Walaja, and I'm drawing Ulais. Walaja Ulais in the river. And one of the battles, I don't remember which one, I'm slightly embarrassed, but not really. There's 50 battles, dude. I can't keep all this straight in my head. At one of the battles, one of the Persian generals is like, screw this, because Khalid kept going, I'll be your champion. And he walks out, now the Persian general is stuck doing the same thing. And the first thing that happens in the opening moments of the battle is the Persian general gets killed. And so this Persian general goes, okay, I bet that bastard's going to do this again. So he buried 12 Persian soldiers in the battlefield right where he thought the challenge would take place with straws so they could breathe through it. He buried them in the night so that in the morning they would come out and do the challenge. And then what was supposed to happen is once the challenge started, the 12 Persian soldiers would jump up and they just murder Khalid right there. So Khalid walks out, the Persian general walks out, the 12 men jump up, and one of Khalid's cousins was in the army, the Muslim Arab army. And he's like, that's not fair. And he runs out and joins Khalid, and the 2 men murder the 13 Persians. And then they destroy the Persian army. And he would use different tactics every time. And one of the battles, what he did was he'd snuck 2 cavalry units behind a hill, and the Persians were in between his men on the other side of the hill and his army. And he just kept slowly backing his army up and making a circle, a half circle out of it. So the Persians would kind of go into the middle, and then he signaled his cavalry that came riding over the hill, and they attacked the Persians from behind, completely surrounded, destroys them. He captures Hira, and then on the way, so see where it says Peraz Sabur? That is Anbar, the city of Anbar in Iraq today. He's heading towards that place. That's where he wants to go. And he's going to fight 3 battles, one after the other in succession. And here's what he does. So there were 60,000 Persian soldiers in 3 separate armies, 20,000 each. And they're coming for him. And by this point, he's down to 15,000 men. Because even though he keeps winning, he's still taking losses. So it's going to be 4-to-1 odds if he lets those 3 Persian armies merge together. And he's thinking, I don't think I can beat 60,000 men with 15,000 men. So if I'm going to win, I'm going to have to attack them piecemeal. I'm going to have to hit each of the 3 Persian units before they get together. So he races his army as fast as he can towards the first one. But first, he cuts his army into 3 5,000-man units. And he tells them, we're going to arrive at 2 a.m., and he gives them a date, like 2 weeks in advance. And he says, I need you at this location, at this time, on this day. Go. And they take 3 different paths, and they're going to come at this Persian unit, and he's guessing where he thinks that Persian unit will have arrived to by that point. I challenge you. This is my challenge. 3 of you, you and 2 of your best friends, get into 3 separate cars, and you can use GPS. Pick a spot somewhere on the other side of the US, because it needs to be a long road trip, right? 3 days. I'm not even going to make it 2 weeks, just 3 days. So I don't care where you want to go, Washington or the other Washington. Either way, it'll work out to be about the same. But make the 3 of you take 3 separate paths, and then time it so that you arrive at the exact same moment. Bet you can't do it. Now take away GPS and navigate at night, trying to guess where you think the enemy army is going to be. They're there when the 3 armies converge at the exact same moment. They catch the Persians asleep in their camp. They tear them to pieces. He's like, all right, 1 down, 2 to go. He looks at his men and he goes, this is where the Persian army is the next one's going to be. And he tells them, I want you there this day, this time. Go. 3 different ways. And the 3 units charge as fast as they can. And they get there. And the Persian army is there. And he destroys that one too. And he tells his men, all right, we got 1 more. 1 more. And go. And they arrive at the right time, on the right day, in the spot where the Persians were at night. And they wiped out the 3rd 20,000-man unit with almost no losses. They dispatched 60,000 men in a maneuver that I bet a contemporary military force would never be able to execute, let alone 3 times in a row. Insane. It shouldn't be doable. He gets to where it says Dura. That's the city of Firaz. Firaz was the border between the Roman Empire and the Persian Empire. The Persians and the Romans hated each other's guts. They had been fighting each other 628 plus 52, right? It was 53 BC, the Battle of Karhae, but there's no year 0, so you have to subtract 1. That's why I'm doing 52. So what is 28 plus 52? 80. For 680 years, the Romans and the Persians had been fighting each other. Can you comprehend 680 years of warfare? Like, I don't even know what that means. What does that even mean? By the time Khalid Ibn Al-Walid gets to Firaz, the Persians and the Romans looked at each other and went, you are no longer the enemy. We have a new enemy. I don't know where these guys even came from. Because you have to remember, at this point in time, the Persians had been an empire for 1,200 years. And the Romans had officially been an empire, calling themselves an empire, for 600 years, but they had been imperial for the 300 before that. Because even before Rome was an empire, it owned Spain, it owned North Africa, it owned Syria, it owned Turkey, it owned Greece, right? And so you have 900 years of imperial history for the Romans and 1,200 years of imperial history for the Persians. There's 21 centuries between those 2 empires. And they're also technologically the most advanced civilizations on Earth. And they had massive populations compared to the Arabs. They're down because of malaria, but the Arabs don't have any rivers. They don't have the agricultural capacity to support large populations. The Arabs are outnumbered, they're out-technologied, they're out-moneyed, they're out-experienced, They're out-equipped. And Khalid, in 1 year, has captured Iraq. Our military was there for 8 years. We didn't capture anything. We captured IEDs in the face. So the Persians go to the Romans, they're like, okay, we're going to fight this one as allies, right? And the Romans are like, yes, yeah, we're good. Because in the meantime, an Arab army is attacked from this side and is trying to get to Jerusalem. And so the Romans know that the Arabs, you're outnumbered, you're out-technology, you're out-moneyed, and you're facing two empires. Do you attack both at the same time? That makes no sense, but it's exactly what the Arabs did. They attacked the two oldest, most powerful empires at the same time, even though they were outnumbered by one, let alone both. And so the Romans are like, yeah, we'll work with you. So at Firaz, the combined Roman and Persian armies, which by the way was largely made up of Christian Arabs, not completely, but there was a huge contingent, probably about 50,000 Christian Arabs. The combined Persian and Roman army was 150,000 men against 15,000 Muslim Arabs. So Khalid arrives. Khalid is on the east bank of the Euphrates. The Persians and the Romans are on the west bank. There's a ford and a bridge, which is convenient if you're moving an army. It's nice. And so Khalid needs the Persians and the Romans to cross the river to fight. So he very politely backs his army up from the bridge and the ford and split it into three 5,000-man units. He liked that. And he put one upriver, one downriver, and then pulled the other one away from the river. And he just waited. So the Persians and Romans start to cross the bridge and they're also crossing the ford at the same time. And he waits, and he waits, and he waits. And then he does a prayer as he's waiting. And he says, God, if you give me this victory, I will go to Mecca and I will do the Hajj. I know I'm going to die. I know there's no way we're going to defeat 150,000 men today. But that's what I will do. I'll run and I'll do the Hajj. And I'm actually happy that I get to die as a warrior here today. When 50,000 Persians and Romans had crossed the Euphrates, he blew a horn. The men that were up and down river attacked them by going along the riverbank and tried to then merge at the bridge and the ford so that they would cut the guys who had crossed off from the guys on the other side. Then what Khalid did was he took the 5,000 men who against 50,000 and he has them charge into him. And he had his men as thin as possible. And then he backs his men up. And then he charges again. And then he backs his men up. And he charges again. And every time his horses go in to those men, it compressed them a little bit. It compressed them a little bit more. So after a while, the Persians and the Romans are so compressed they can't move their arms, they can't swing their weapons. He's just compacted them together. And they realize what he's done to them. And they panic. And they turn around to run back to the river to cross it. 50,000 men turning all at once to stampede. You could hear the bones breaking. And then the Muslim Arabs just went in and started killing them as they're running. By the time the battle was done, 200 Muslim Arabs were dead. 50,000 Persians and Romans were dead. What is this?